My name is Madison Ray, I'm 33 years old, and tonight, I learned silence can be louder than any scream. We didn't get anything for your kids, my dad said, sliding 2 napkins toward them like leftovers. Across the table, my brother unwrapped his gleaming dollar pasta box, the one dripping with imported truffle sauce and golden dessert forks. His wife smirked, her voice honeyed with cruelty. Be grateful they were invited. I smiled, small, steady. Copy that, I whispered, folding the napkins neatly. My hands didn't shake this time. They used to, when I still believed family meant safety. But not anymore. The air smelled of expensive wine and judgment. Laughter echoed around the reunion hall, my brother's booming, my dad's proud. I'd spent years trying to earn a seat at this table. Tonight, I finally realized I'd outgrown it. When the waiter approached, my dad cleared his throat. Put everything on my tab, he said. Then, like a knife slipping between ribs, added, except hers. The table erupted in snickers. My son stared at his plate, my daughter tugged my sleeve. Mom, she whispered, can we just go home? For a second, I almost did. Almost walked away like every other time. But this time, something inside me stayed still. Not hurt. Not broken. Just awake. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping across marble like a challenge. Every eye turned. My brother leaned back, smirking. My dad crossed his arms. And I smiled, calm, cold, controlled. When the waiter reached me, I said softly, actually, there's been a change. I slipped a matte black card onto the table. Put everything, and I mean everything, on mine. Their orders too. The waiter froze. My father blinked. And as my brother's wife's fork clattered against her plate, I added, you can keep your napkins. I already own the restaurant. The laughter died instantly. Outside, rain began to fall. Inside, silence, the kind that hurts. The first act of my quiet revenge had begun. For a full 10 seconds, no one spoke. You could hear the rain sliding down the restaurant's glass walls, the hum of music soft and haunting, like the soundtrack of disbelief. My dad's jaw tightened. Madison, he said slowly, don't start one of your scenes. Scenes. That's what he always called it when I refused to shrink. When I refused to apologize for being uncomfortable around their cruelty. I smiled politely. Don't worry, Dad. The scene already ended, I just bought the stage. My brother scoffed. You? Own this place. His laugh was sharp, the kind people use to protect their ego. His wife leaned in, whispering, probably leased a table for the night. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The manager, Daniel, walked over just then, his tie crisp, his tone respectful. Good evening, Ms. Ray. Everything up to your expectations? My dad's face drained of color. Daniel nodded toward me. Your usual table is ready whenever you'd like, and the chef wanted to thank you personally for the new wine contract. The smirk died on my brother's lips. His wife looked at her untouched pasta as if it might explode. I just turned to the waiter. Please, make sure my family enjoys their meal. And double the dessert. On the house. It was over before it began. But I wasn't angry, not anymore. Just empty, in that cold, freeing way you feel when you've finally stopped caring about people who never cared for you. My daughter tucked my sleeve again. Mom, do they hate us? I crouched to her level, brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. No, baby. They just don't know what love looks like when it stands up for itself. I straightened, nodded to the waiter, and walked toward the exit, heels clicking like punctuation marks on a story I'd been rewriting in silence for years. Behind me, I heard my brother whisper, when did she get this rich? My father's voice followed, cracked and low. The day we stopped paying attention. That night, after the family reunion disaster, I drove home in silence. The rain was heavier now, soft drumming against the windshield, almost rhythmic. My kids slept in the back seat, faces peaceful, unaware that their mother had just burned the bridge she was once forced to crawl across. I parked outside my townhouse, the one they didn't know I owned outright. The one I'd bought with the company they never asked about. 4 years, I was the struggling single mom, the one everyone pitied during Christmas dinners while writing checks for my brother's business ventures. They thought my quiet life meant failure. They didn't realize quiet people often build empires while everyone else is busy talking. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat by the window, and let the city lights wash over me. I should have felt triumphant, but I didn't. I felt hollow, like revenge had emptied something I didn't even know was still inside me. My phone buzzed. Dad, we need to talk. Tomorrow. Don't make this worse. Typical. No apology. No reflection. Just control. I stared at the message, the words flickering against the glass. For a moment, I almost replied. But then I remembered the years, the ignored birthdays, the unpaid promises, the way they tell my kids, Mom's just sensitive. No, I wasn't sensitive. I was alert. And I was done. The next morning, I walked into my company's downtown office. My name, Madison Ray Holdings, gleamed on the glass door. My assistant looked up. You're trending, she said, half smiling. I frowned. Trending. She turned her laptop around, a photo from last night. Me standing, card in hand, my family's stunned faces in the background. The caption read, Woman buys out restaurant, shuts down family bullies in style. Thousands of comments. Thousands of strangers cheering. And for the first time, I realized something. I didn't just stand up for myself last night. I stood up for every quiet person who ever got handed napkins while others got dessert. I looked at my reflection in the office glass, calm, collected, untouchable, and whispered, Copy that. 3 days later, a cream-colored envelope arrived at my office. No return address, just my father's handwriting. It read, Family dinner. Sunday 7 p.m. Attendance expected. I almost laughed. Expected. After everything that happened, he still thought I'd come running because he said so. But I went, not out of obedience, but closure. Sometimes the only way to end a story is to hear the villain's last line. When I arrived, the house looked smaller. Maybe it was the years, or maybe I'd just grown taller in ways they couldn't measure. My brother's car was parked front and center, new model, probably leased. His wife stood by the doorway, her smile tight, rehearsed. Inside, the table was already set. My dad sat at the head, as always, the self-appointed king. My mother avoided my eyes, her silence heavy with habit. Madison, he said, forcing a smile, nice of you to show up. We thought you'd be too busy, owning restaurants. The sarcasm stung less than it used to. I just took my seat and said softly, I make time for what matters. Dinner began with awkward clinking, forced conversation. My brother bragged about his investments, his wife corrected everyone's grammar. Then my dad cleared his throat. So, this company of yours. What exactly is it you do? I met his gaze. I build things. Mostly what other people underestimate. He chuckled. You always had a wild imagination. Then, leaning back, he added, since you seem to be doing well, your brother's business could use some liquidity. Family should help family, right? There it was, not curiosity, not pride, just opportunity. I took a slow sip of water, looked around the table, and smiled faintly. Sure, Dad. I believe in helping family. Their faces lit up for a second. But only the kind that doesn't hand my kids napkins while feeding others steak. The silence hit harder than I expected. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. My mother finally whispered, Madison, why are you doing this? I looked at her gently. Because this time, Mom, you're going to hear me. The air around that dinner table grew so still, you could almost hear their pride cracking. My brother's fork froze mid-air. My dad's jaw tightened. My mother's eyes darted toward the candles, as if avoiding me would make the truth vanish. Watch your tone, my father said finally, his voice clipped, measured. You're not talking to your co-workers. I met his gaze. You're right, I said calmly. At least they respect me. That did it. My brother laughed under his breath. Respect? Madison, come on. You've always been dramatic. You get emotional, then you make everything about you. I leaned back, arms folded. Maybe. But you know what's funny? Every time I stood up for myself, you called it drama. Every time you belittled me, you called it family. My dad's voice rose. We've given you everything. I cut him off gently. You gave me lessons, Dad. Not gifts. Lessons in silence, survival, and self-worth. And I paid attention. He blinked, unsure whether to be angry or ashamed. My brother slammed his glass down. You think you're better than us now? I smiled faintly. No, Ethan. I just stopped pretending we were the same. For a moment, no one breathed. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, crisp, black, with gold lettering. Inside are transfer documents, I said. Remember the house you mortgaged to fund Ethan's business? The one the bank seized. My father stiffened. I bought it. Last year. My brother's wife gasped. My mother's hand went to her mouth. I slid the folder toward my dad. You can keep it. Debt-free. Call it repayment, for teaching me exactly how not to treat people. My father's eyes filled, but no words came. For the first time in my life, he didn't know what to say. I stood up, steady and quiet. I didn't come for revenge, I said. I came to end the pattern. And as I walked toward the door, I heard my mother whisper, barely audible. She's not the same girl we raised. No, I wasn't. I was the woman they built by breaking. I stood outside the house, the night air cold against my face. Behind me, I could still hear the faint sound of arguing, my father's voice, my brother's protests, my mother's sobs. It was a familiar chaos, but this time, it didn't reach me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in the storm. I was watching it fade from a distance. My daughter's voice pulled me back. Mom? Are you okay? She was sitting in the car, her small hands holding her brother's. Their eyes were the only truth I ever needed. I smiled softly. Yeah, baby. I'm okay now. And I meant it. On the drive home, I thought about how pain becomes inheritance. How daughters learn silence from their mothers. How we mistake endurance for love. But tonight, the chain broke. My kids would never have to earn kindness from the people who claimed to love them. The next morning, I opened my office blinds. The skyline shimmered with sunlight, as if the world itself was offering closure. On my desk sat a letter, handwritten, unaddressed. I recognized the shaky script immediately. Madison. I don't know who taught you strength. But I wish it had been me. Dad. I read it twice, tears prickling but not falling. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly, but it was something human. Maybe regret. Maybe peace. That afternoon, I met with my legal team to finalize a new project, a scholarship fund for single mothers rebuilding their lives. I called it the Napkin Fund. A reminder that sometimes what people hand you in humiliation can become your foundation for dignity. When the paperwork was done, I went home early. My kids were painting in the living room, messy, loud, alive. For once, there was no tension, no pretending, no fear of being too much. I sat beside them and whispered, you know, everything we build in color. My daughter looked up and smiled, because we don't live in napkins anymore, right? I laughed through the tears. Exactly, baby. Not anymore. A few weeks later, I got a call I didn't expect. Ms. Ray, the voice said. We're handling your father's estate planning. He's requested a meeting, with you only. I froze. My father wasn't the type to request anything. He commanded. But something in that sentence, with you only, told me the power balance had shifted for good. I arrived at his lawyer's office the next day. The walls smelled of mahogany and old regret. My father sat by the window, thinner, older, eyes tired. When he saw me, his lips parted in a faint smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. You came, he said softly. I almost didn't, I replied. But I figured closure deserves an audience. He nodded. You always had your mother's way with words. That almost sounded like a compliment, until he continued. I was hard on you, Madison. Maybe too hard. I just didn't want you to struggle. I exhaled, a quiet laugh escaping. You didn't stop me from struggling, Dad. You just made sure I did it alone. His eyes dropped. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Finally, he pushed a folder toward me. Legal documents, property deeds, trust transfers. I'm rewriting everything, he said. Your brother already has enough. You built something from nothing, you earned this. I didn't touch the folder. I don't want your money, I said. I just wanted the truth. He looked up, And for a moment, I saw the man behind the pride. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know how to love you without trying to control you." The words hit harder than any insult he'd ever thrown. Not because they hurt, but because they were real. I stood, steady, composed. "I forgive you, Dad. But I'm not staying in the past." He nodded slowly. "I know. That's why I finally trust you to lead this family's name forward." As I walked out, sunlight poured through the tall glass windows, warm, blinding, almost cinematic. The same girl they once handed napkins to was now rewriting their legacy. 6 months later, life had a new rhythm, calm, focused, and deeply mine. The restaurant thrived. The napkin fund was sending its first group of mothers back to college. My kids laughed louder, dreamed bigger, and no longer flinched when someone said family dinner. Then one evening, as I locked up my office, my phone buzzed. "Ethan, Dad's hosting another reunion. He wants you there." For a long time, I stared at that message, the same words that once made me anxious, small, unsure. But not tonight. That Sunday, I walked into the restaurant, my restaurant, where it had all begun. The same chandeliers. The same marble floors. Only this time, the host greeted me like the owner I was. My father was there, frailer now but softer somehow. My brother stood beside him, quiet. His wife didn't meet my eyes. "Madison," my father said, rising. "We ordered for everyone." I smiled, gentle but firm. "Good." I brought dessert. 2 waiters emerged carrying silver trays, each one with a neatly folded linen napkin on top. The same kind they once handed my kids. But when the napkins were lifted, small envelopes lay beneath, donation receipts, all under the napkin fund, each one in their names. My dad's eyes watered as he read. You used your success to give back." I nodded. "Because that's what real family does, Dad. They feed others, not their own egos." For a moment, silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was healing. My mother reached across the table, her hand trembling. "We're proud of you, Maddie." And for the first time in my entire life, I believed her. Later that night, after the laughter had softened and the candles had burned low, my father pulled me aside. "You turned pain into power," he said quietly. "That's something I never could." I looked him in the eyes and smiled. "You gave me the blueprint, Dad. I just built something better." He laughed, tired but genuine, and whispered, "Copy that." I walked out under the city lights, free at last.